Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to another episode of the Husker Big Red podcast. I'm Chris Peterson, and with me, as always, is my co host, Danny Gillette. We're here on a Tuesday. We're a little busy on Monday, so we pushed things back a day, but we're here with a lot of information. We got a lot of recruiting info going on. Gibson Pyle getting his All American Bowl invite. I did want to mention, guys, before we get too far into this, if you haven't yet, check out our exclusive, not one-on-one, I should say, but our exclusive interview with Isaac Dickey, the preferred walk-on fullback for Nebraska. We did that last Friday, and that's a real treat for Nebraska fans. I think he's going to be a really exciting player for the Cornhuskers here in the future. What about you, Danny?
I just love to hear him say that he wanted to hit somebody. I love that. That's exactly what we need. And, we've talked about the physical offense that Nebraska wants to bring. I think he'll fit well. And, perhaps more importantly than all of that, he sounds like really focused and that he really wants to be here. And, it's just great to see somebody so excited about joining the program. And even when we quizzed him on some Husker history, he was able to name some names that were around before even I was born. So it was good to see, him kind of know Nebraska history as well, and it was interesting to hear him talk about Coach Barthel and how hands-on the coaching staff was at the fullback camp. I mean, the fact that we had a fullback camp is even cool in its own right. So it was a really good interview, and he spoke very well. I actually learned a lot from his interview on Friday.
Yeah, he's an interesting player too. He runs almost 11 flat. I mean, he's got a very productive career running the ball, so that makes me, interested in his future. Not necessarily that he could be, starting running back, but just that he could also, make some contributions, with the fullback too. We've seen, those guys be effective running the ball for Nebraska, over the
Yeah.
years, and getting 4 or 5 opportunities a game. I mean, Andy Jankovic, I believe, he was
Hmm.
a guy that had some big runs. So I mean, some of the guys he talked about, Joel Makovica, Corey Schlesinger, it's not like those guys, were running like Amon Green, but when they got their opportunities, they took advantage of it. And so, I would love to see, Isaac Dickey getting some fullback dives like in the future, out of the
That'd
spread or
be
whatever
awesome.
anymore. But
That would be awesome. And I think he sounds like a guy that just wants to play no matter what. And I love that attitude. And he'll definitely find some reps during his time at Nebraska for sure. And I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table. And he's a big kid. I was watching some of his workout videos, and he posted something the other day. He is absolutely jacked. So I really hope he does well, and we'll try to get him on the show again soon. I'm happy that we're getting to interview a lot of these guys, and it seems like the future of the program is in good hands in more ways than one.
it definitely is in good hands, yeah, with Coach Matt Rule and this staff. A lot of really good recruits and guys that are really committed. I think to rebuilding Nebraska, and with Isaac Dickey, some of these other guys too. I think it's another sign of Rule kind of rebuilding the walk-on program too, which has always been a strong tradition at Nebraska. Not that there was still solid walk-on players during the Frost era, but it's good to see that kind of continuing. And Isaac Dickey, yeah, through special teams and working his way into the offense, I think is going to have a good chance down the road to eventually earn a scholarship. And because it's not like you're going to go out and recruit a bunch of fullbacks. You know what I mean? And honestly, another thought too is, if he is starting to get on the field, I think he could be a candidate to get some good NIL money. Fullbacks, Nebraska. I think there's a lot of potential there. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of potential with his career, and I think he's just another guy that's signed or committed, not signed yet, excuse me, but committed as part of this 2024 class. That's pretty underrated. We got another example this week when Gibson Pyle, was selected for the All American Bowl. I mean, he dominated. He was one of the best offensive linemen, kind of at that showcase down in Florida, and that earned him the
Yeah.
invitation. And but yeah, it's crazy to see. He's still ranked like 753 or something in the 24/7 composite rankings. So that just kind of got me thinking about different recruits that should be upgraded as blue chips. We saw some guys that did get upgraded via, on 3. I believe Keywan Lacey and Carlon Jones both got 4 stars. But there's still some guys that definitely are a little bit underrated. And Gibson Pyle is, very near the top of my list in terms of Cornhuskers that should be, rated as 4-star players like across the spectrum.
You talk about people that want to just smash and knock the living daylights out of people. Pyle can do that as well. I mean, he's a very physical lineman, and he seems like he really wants to be a part of the program. He really wants to turn things around, and I'm really happy to see him get the recognition he deserves. I mean, honestly, some of it could be that he's from the state of Texas, and Texas is huge. I mean, football is everywhere, and there's so many players, just like Florida, to kind of go through and sift through. And I'm glad Pyle's getting a lot of recognition now as he gets set to begin his Nebraska football career, in the near future.
Yeah, and it's I don't know if it's because he's slated to be a guard or exactly. It could be the state of Texas thing, but yeah, he put together a really solid camp, and he's a guy that I really could see probably having a decent chance to start like in his second season. At Nebraska, I think he'll be a multi-year starter. At one of those guard spots. But yeah, it's interesting. If you look at like the 24/7 composite rankings, or even just the 24/7 rankings, like Keywan Lacey right now is ranked 874. Carlon Jones is ranked 819, and so that's definitely dragging down. So like even though Keywan Lacey has been upgraded to a 4-star by some, he's still 529th in the 24/7 composite rankings. So that's kind of what I tend to look at in terms of like calculating the blue chip ratio and things like that. I think the composite ranking is probably the best to calculate all of them. So who are some other guys that you could see that deserve kind of an upgrade that you think should get a ranking upgrade here in the next few months?
Braylon Prude, I thought he was ranked very low for the type of talent he has. Prude is ranked 632nd overall nationally. I think he should get a 4-star by the time his senior season ends. And then, just looking at a guy like Quinn Clark, I mean, I don't think he's even ranked nationally. I mean, with him being an 84 overall, according to the 24/7 rankings, it may be a bit of a climb to get a 4-star, but I feel like he deserves to at least be ranked. And you can kind of speak on this. Is it because he's from, like, if he wasn't from Montana, for example, do you think he would be ranked nationally by now?
I think he is ranked 13 in the 1300s in the composite. 24/7
Oh, you know what? I'm
doesn't.
looking.
Well, they mixed up the way they're putting their rankings out. For some reason, they're showing their rankings instead of the composite, like when you look up Nebraska commitments or
Gotcha.
whatever.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's because of On3's doing that, but yeah, he is still pretty underrated. I think part of it is because he's from Montana and just the competition. There's just not been a ton of Division I players. There's 3 in this class already for Montana. They have a guy going to Boise State and another guy going to Kentucky, but I think that is a big part of it. There's just not the competition to kind of verify what you're seeing on film, I guess would be the best way to say it. And I think that's why Nebraska's kind of getting a steal. I mean, he ran a really fast 40 time, and I know from I actually just interviewed Quinn Clark for my day job at 406sports.com and here in Montana, and he was actually talking to me about when they offered him, the coaching staff was kind of worried about Iowa State, and Iowa State ended up not offering Quinn. He went there after his Nebraska camp, so I don't know how well he performed. He was really tired. So, but they definitely knew what kind of player he was, and other schools were, going to be interested. And so I think they did a good job to lock this one down, as quickly as they did.
He reminds me a lot of Malachi Coleman, just in the way he has the speed and the way he can play on the outside and his ability to run after the catch. And so I feel like Clark is still a bit underrated. I think, and honestly, not that he's underrated, but I don't understand why Isaiah McMorris doesn't have a 4-star yet. I mean, it feels like he's ranked 89th overall numerically, and I'm just taking a look at the national rankings really quick. He's 493rd nationally and the 73rd overall wide receiver in the class, but I'm wondering if he'll get a 4-star because he is very close to getting one.
Yeah, he's definitely on my list for a guy that I think definitely deserves an upgrade. I mean, he's not only has he got good production. I mean, he's got pretty elite production, over 1,500 yards receiving last year. I
Yeah.
think he had like 12 touchdowns. Yeah, so 12. I was wrong. 12, 1,297 and 15 touchdowns, but still, I mean, give or take
Not
a few
bad.
hundred yards. Yeah, and he runs. I mean, he runs 10.62 in the 100-meter dash. He can play multiple positions. So, yeah, that's another weird one. I really don't understand why he's a 3-star. And I mean, I could say that about Daniel Kalen too. I know Daniel Kalen has gotten some upgrades lately. He's been upgraded in the 24/7 their specific rankings, their own rankings have him like as the 15th best quarterback. He's also now a 4-star in the On3 industry rankings, which are kind of, like I said, they're kind of like an average, but 24/7 Sports is the only recruiting service that has him as a 4-star right now. And so that to me that's not right. He needs to get upgraded there. Like On3 has him as the 41st best quarterback. ESPN has him 24th. Rivals has him 30th. 24/7 has him 15th, which I think is more. I think he was invited to the Elite 11 for Christ's sake, and he won an Elite 11 event. So how do you have him ranked 41st among quarterbacks? That makes no sense to me. And
Because he's not the golden boy that all the media writers were told to write about, and all their storylines. They didn't have Daniel Kalen in their storylines or their flashy favorites at the Elite 11. And for people saying who gives a shit, well, it does matter. They need to evaluate kids properly, not just speaking from a Nebraska perspective, but overall. And I understand there's a lot of kids in each state. But I mean, I feel like some of these kids just get missed out on, like Lacey and like those like these type of guys. They need to be evaluated properly, and because they're a lot better than what these stupid star rankings show.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, and it's just weird how they have it graded. And yeah, at the end of the day, sure, maybe it's not going to affect player performance and whatnot, but it definitely does matter in terms of their recruiting. And yeah, it's good to see guys get ranked fairly, like you said. And right now, Nebraska just, I mean, they don't have a ton of 4-star prospects overall. I think, let's see, the industry rankings for On3 have them with 5. So that's kind of it's like 5 or 6 across the board. But then they've got like 5 or 6 others that are in that 4, 500, 600 range. That I like Kewan Lacey should be a 4-star to me. I don't know. Like I said, it's the 24/7 ranking. It's easily in like the 800s, which is ridiculous. And that's the same thing with Carlon Jones. I mean, he's ranked in the 800s by 24/7 too. It's like, have you guys not seen him play? Have you not updated your rankings? I mean, so
If he
it is.
wasn't, if they weren't in Texas, I bet you they'd be 4 stars.
Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah, I think there is. It maybe gets harder
You
to
see the
see
same
him.
thing happen in Florida. Some of these really, really good kids get underrated just because there's so many kids to, evaluate and things like that. But if Carlin and Kewan weren't in Texas, I bet you they'd be 4 stars.
Yeah, and maybe Braylon Prude too. But
Yeah.
he's definitely a guy that I'm excited about, and he's another guy that I think is a really a steal for Nebraska. Getting him where to get him to evaluate him in a camp, and to get him in. I mean, that's good work by this coaching staff, and it does show. Like with the Gibson Pyle was the second commitment in this class, and he's showing that he's a lot better than people thought too. So I think we need to give, and we have been. I feel like you and I have definitely been, but this may be just reinforcing our point that this coaching staff knows how to evaluate talent.
And we need to get Gibson on another one of these shows soon. I loved talking with him last time, and I'd love to hear about his experience at the camps and getting upgraded and stuff. And I think I saw something. Did he run a 4.17 shuttle?
He did a 4.7 in the
4.7. I
40.
mean,
Yeah, so
that's still crazy. So
yeah,
that's
that's
just
moving for offensive line. And yeah, I mean,
like, man,
and like
wow.
I'm really excited about Gunnar Gatula and like the way he's played at tackle, in spring practice. And then you're adding Gibson. I just think they're adding a lot of, quality offensive line pieces, which will be kind of a good segue to some recruiting stuff. Preston Tauma or Tauma, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing
Tamua?
that name. Tamua.
I don't know.
Yeah, please, if we mispronounce that, get comments, put in the comment section, and we'll
We
try to
won't mind
correct
at
that.
all. We need to know these pronunciations.
But anyways, 6'4", 315 pounds, the number one player out of the state of Hawaii, and it seemed like Oregon was the favorite, and then like last week, all of a sudden, Blair and Julo from 24/7 put in a prediction, and yesterday, Justin Hopkins he does a Scoop Duck from it's an Oregon site from On3. He's really trustworthy reporter in terms of recruiting. He had his on-3 prediction on Oregon. He was the first one, and he flipped that to Nebraska last night. So to me, this is a done deal. Like, Nebraska's getting this guy. That's my opinion. But what are your thoughts on Preston Tauma?
I love him. I mean, he's a very physical lineman. He bowls people over. He's very sturdy in his movements. He sets his feet real well. He's aggressive. I think, he is a fantastic lineman. And although he's a 4-star, I feel like he's not getting a ton of attention either. I mean, I feel like he could be a guy that could come in and, play right away and, you really get an opportunity to shine. And with this offensive line centric coaching staff, I feel like that will only help him get even better. So I'm really excited. I hope he commits. And even though all these things are trending that way, I never believe it until I actually see the kids on the field. So, I mean, I'm just really excited that that Nebraska's in the mix. And for all the flack I've given Donovan Raiola about his lack of recruiting, he's done, fairly well this cycle in getting linemen. And, because, and you can attest to this too, and I actually talked about it on a show I was on last night. The thing with linemen is that you can have a really good 3-star lineman, and, he doesn't have to be a sexy 4 or 5-star, and he can get the job done. I mean, my friend was drafted 14th overall by the Atlanta Falcons, and he was a 3-star at Boston College. So I feel like linemen have, the star rankings for them don't necessarily matter a ton, if you know what I mean. So, I mean, I feel like just overall the cycle, Rayola's done a good job of getting some really, really good linemen that fit the aggressive play style that he's looking for.
He has done a really good job on this cycle. I do agree with you. One thing with linemen, just because the thing about it, okay, is how are you going to, they go to all these 7-on-7 camps. I mean, even with Gibson Pyle, it's not like these guys are in pads. I mean, full pads. That doesn't really happen at these camps. So I have a hard time evaluating offensive linemen if you're not playing full. It's not real. It's not real. Putting big guys in shorts and movement. I mean, yeah, guys like Brandon Baker. I'm not saying he's not going to be great, but they look amazing at those types of events, right? But those guys get rated higher than they should at times because they look like they look the part, and they don't always play like the part. And so that's with offensive line. I think so much of it has to do with coaching and development and all that type of stuff. And so if you get good coaches, you can really turn out good offensive linemen. And we'll see with Rail. The recruiting definitely is getting better. They've landed. This would be a good one. With the top kid out of Hawaii, Grant Bricks is still there. On the board. He hasn't really talked that much about a decision, but Nebraska's still right in the mix with those two guys. And the one thing with Tauma is, to me, I mean, he's like 6'4" or close to 6'5", but I mean, he looks like he has the movement skills to play tackle. And I'm just interested in this class going for, like Nebraska had all those huge offensive linemen, and this Rule staff, they're very into the 6'4", 6'5" height range so far, at least for a lot of these guys are going to play guard, but it's just interesting. They're not like recruiting those 6'8" type tackles, anymore.
Well, you kind of need guys to be able to move quickly now with how passing based the game is. And, I'm just looking, you know, at some of Rayola's recruiting gets. I mean, his highest one so far has been Gunnar Gatula. And Gatula was an 87 overall numerically. He committed in 2021. And then Gibson, was the second highest, followed by Brock Knudsen, Sam Sledge, and Landon Davidson. So, Tamua has a chance to, absolutely blow these guys out of the water in terms of ranking. And, I think, Pyle and Davidson in particular are two really good gets for Rayola. And I think also having a coaching staff that, actually wants to run the football, be physical, and get good linemen in here also helps Rayola a ton too. Because you could even tell last year, we won't go down this rabbit hole too much, but the offensive style did not mesh, or help out offensive linemen in any way. And now that we have a coaching staff that understands, linemen, I feel like that's helping Rayola recruit a little better as well. He can sell a lot more to potential recruits in terms of, hey, you're gonna be able to fit because X, Y, and Z, and it's not just a shot in the dark.
Yeah, and maybe our offensive coordinator won't run like empty protection, like
Yeah,
spread
yeah.
off, like playground style. Everybody go deep. Fine, he did that all the time, drove
I
me
mean, it worked
crazy.
for
But
Trey Palmer, like, to his credit, but, I mean, it didn't work for everybody else.
it worked. Yeah, it worked if Casey could run away for a second before he got killed. But
Poor
anyway,
Anthony Grant, too. I feel like Grant got a lot of, lost opportunities last season, but I think that's gonna change this year.
yeah, it just was frustrating in some of those games. Like the Minnesota game is one I remember where they started off really well. Grant started off really well, and then they kind of went away from running the ball. I feel like they did the same thing against
Illinois?
Wisconsin. Yeah, Illinois. Did basically everybody. It seemed like every time they ran the ball well, and Anthony Grant just like he never got the carries that he probably should have got. So hopefully Marcus Satterfield will be a little more into running the football. I definitely think it's going to be more of a focus, and I am excited to see what Jeff Sims and all these weapons can do. But yeah, it is interesting if they can get another 4-star commitment. That would be really big. Another topic I want to discuss on recruiting. You still got Amari Sanders out there. Caleb Bennings. I saw that Mike Schaefer had kind of a little report that he's expected to take a visit at the end of this month. So, like, if that visit happens, do you think Nebraska's going to take one of those guys, like Benning or Sanders, or do you think there's a chance they take both or neither? What are your thoughts?
Well, is Benning still on the December timeline for his decision?
As of right, yeah, for now, he's stuck with that for now. But I'm
I don't
wondering if
know.
that could change after he gets on campus again. That's what I'm kind of curious about.
Well, I feel like Sanders, like, he's been crystal ball to Nebraska, and it seems like all the momentum is trending. I feel like Nebraska could take Sanders for sure. And then I kind of wonder about Grant Bricks as well. I'm not sure when I believe Bricks was set to make his decision before his senior season coming up, so maybe soon, but I'm not exactly sure the exact date. So say we land Sanders and Bricks, that would put us at 25 or no,
Yeah,
20, yeah.
yeah, 25. Yep.
Okay, so, I mean, Benning, I don't see where Benning fits because we already have Donovan Jones. I'm not saying that Benning is worse or whatever to Donovan Jones, but I'm just, like, I don't see a fit there now that we have Jones. I mean, we can always use another safety, but I don't know, we'll see. I always thought that we landed Donovan Jones and we pursued Jones because we kinda knew we weren't gonna get Benning, but maybe that's changed.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm not sure if there's a connection. I definitely think there is a connection between like Sanders and Benning, and I just don't see them taking two more defensive backs. But I don't think Braylon Prude's going to play defensive back.
He's gonna
So
be a linebacker, I think.
yeah, and there's another guy, Rex Guthrie. I think has a good chance of maybe being a line or like that rover
Yeah.
position. So I mean,
Yep.
but at any rate, I don't know. It's just I watch Caleb Benning, and when I watch his highlights, and I know that I think he was hurt some of last year, but I just know when I watch him play that I want him to be a Nebraska Cornhusker. I just think that he's an underrated guy. I know he's not a huge, he doesn't have huge size, but I just feel like he's a playmaker, whether it's offense or defense. I just feel like they could find a role for him, and I just feel like that's one of those recruitments. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to recruit him because his dad played there, but I just feel like he's going to be a good player in college, and it just seems like it's such a no-brainer. Like if I was Matt Rule, I would, as long as he's really, I would check the temperature of this visit, see how things are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I just feel like he's going to have a big senior season, and I feel like personally, if Nebraska doesn't take him, then they're going to regret it.
Well, if he waits till December, then I mean, I don't know. It's tough because by then you kind of want to have your class wrapped up, and if there's a better guy out there, you don't want to hold a spot just for Benning to see if he decides. So I don't know. I mean, I would like to have him. I think he's a very good player, but the timeline just doesn't. I'm not a huge fan of the timeline.
Yeah, I get that. And we'll see. Maybe he would announce earlier. Maybe
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe he would make some type of silent pledge. I'm not really sure. I'm not. Obviously I don't know how that's going. And really it's not like he's taken a bunch of other visits or anything. So I mean I don't think that he took a single visit anywhere. And I
I
could
can
be
check that
wrong.
really quick. Hold on.
I think his last visit was to Nebraska. I know he took an unofficial at some point. He got a crystal ball at some point, And Amari Sanders has also, like you said, he's got the crystal balls too, but they haven't, there hasn't been a huge like flood of them, right? There's been like two. One was Brian Christopherson from Huskers 24/7, who I do trust, but I do think it's an issue right now where it's like Nebraska's trying to decide whether or not to take him. That's my read on the situation more.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if Benning's factoring into that or not, because they still have that. They still need to get some. They still need edge. I mean, they need another edge in this. They really don't have a pure edge in this class right now. So they need to get an edge, and they're trying to get some more offensive linemen. So I mean, it it wouldn't shock me if they got up 28-30, but we'll see. I mean, are they gonna have Caleb Benning be the 30th scholarship? I don't know. It's not if Mamari Sanders is in the class too. I mean, then you're almost pushing like 10 defensive backs, which is kind of wild.
And Amari Sanders' crystal balls have been relatively recent. And I know from reading that he talks to Coach Cooper every day, secondaries coach Evan Cooper. So I feel like Sanders is honestly more of a viable option at this point than Benning is. Benning took a visit to Lincoln on June 9th, and he's also, taken a visit, during that big visit weekend in March. He took a visit then too. So I mean, if Benning wants to be here and he wants to come, like that's awesome. If you have a guy like Amari Sanders, I wouldn't make Sanders wait until Benning decides. So it's kind of a tough situation. But at the very least, we have traction with both of them. So if one doesn't work out, then maybe the other will. But I feel like Sanders is almost the more viable option at this point.
Yeah, we'll say that. I just think it depends what happens with this visit weekend, and that's my other thing with Sanders too. Is like if he's trending, he hasn't set a commitment date, and it's I think there's like two crystal balls on 24/7. So like I get it, but why hasn't he committed yet? Like if we're at the point where they're kind of trending with those crystal balls, like is there a reason he hasn't committed? Is it because the staff is still debating that? I'm not sure. Maybe he just is waiting. It's just kind of speculation.
Maybe
But
they're waiting for each other, Sanders and Benning. I mean, maybe they're waiting to see what one of them does.
yeah, maybe, but I just think we'll know either way if Benning, because there's an opening at the end of July where the dead period ends for a bit, so you can take unofficial visits. And I know Nebraska obviously has camp starting, but if he can get it on an unofficial visit, at the end of July, I think that would be a good sign for the Huskers. If not, then yeah, he probably is going to play somewhere else. But I do feel like he's going to have a big senior season, and I feel like by the time this fall rolls around, like Nebraska's just going to want him in the class. So that I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, but I'm still going to stay with what I said. If he doesn't wind up in this class, I think a year or two down the road, Nebraska might regret it. So that's
Well, we'll also have to see what happens this fall because
yeah.
if we start winning games, then that might open up other opportunities for better players. Who knows? I mean, you never know.
Yeah, that is a good, a point to, Brandon Baker put out another tweet with the pictures. Do you actually buy any of that Brandon Baker type stuff, or do you think he's just doing it for traction, clout?
Well, let me first say this. If he wants to come to Nebraska, I absolutely want him. I mean, he would be a huge get, but I think he knows the fan bases are really loud on Twitter, so I could see him doing it for interaction. I mean, recruits know how to play the game now. They know that Nebraska is one of the louder fan bases on Twitter, and he knows that we all get excited and talk about him on our shows on Tuesday mornings. So he knows what he's doing, but that's not to say that I wouldn't love to have him because I absolutely would. I mean, if we have a shot, that would be great, but I don't really see how he fits with all the other linemen we've taken and potentially, Bricks as well. So, I'd love to have him, but I don't see it. I think he's just doing it for clicks and retweets.
Yeah, I do think yeah, maybe it is part of that, but I mean he did take two visits to Nebraska, like unofficial visits in the spring. So he definitely did have some interest there. It just seemed like he kind of got, you know, it's hard when Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, all the big names,
I don't
Michigan,
blame him either.
everybody's
Yeah.
after you, but Florida State. But so his picture he put out, it was Nebraska, Florida State, Georgia, and Oregon. And Oregon has felt like the favorite for a while in this recruitment. And so it's just kind of interesting that even some of the schools he visited, he didn't post. So it's really hard to say even like Brandon Baker's top 5. I mean, I know Oregon's definitely in the mix. Georgia seems to be right there, but I mean, Nebraska, for all we know, could be in the top 5, but I don't know if it's, they could even be in the top 4. He might really like Raiola and Matt Rule, but he still hasn't taken an official visit, and I don't see him committing if he does, unless he gets back to campus. So, I mean, if he shows up, I mean, there was talk of him visiting in September. Guys can take an unlimited amount of visits. So, like, if he shows up for a game for an official visit in September, then yeah, I'll put him, I'll take that seriously. But right now, I don't even know how much Nebraska's even recruiting him seriously, because they're trying to get Grant Bricks done. They're trying to get, this kid out of Hawaii. So I really don't know
Yeah.
how much. I haven't heard that Nebraska's even contacted him, or,
No.
I'm wondering if he's even on the board anymore.
My guess, and this is just purely a guess with the way they're recruiting other offensive linemen, I don't think he's on their board anymore. I mean, if we land Tamua and then Bricks, then that's 2 more linemen, and then where does he fit? Because we already have Landon Davidson. We got Pyle coming in. We have you know, Sam Sledge coming in for 2023. I mean, there's a ton of names. I'm just looking really quick here, and it doesn't look like a lot of room for Baker, and he's a really good player, but we have a lot of linemen, already. So my guess is that Nebraska kind of knows Jake Peters too. We have, so I'm thinking Nebraska probably knows that he's not coming here, and that's why they're recruiting other linemen, and Baker's just using it for engagement. But we'll see. I mean, it just doesn't seem like there would be a lot of room for him here now.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'd make room. I mean, you make room for
Yeah. Oh
Brandon.
yeah.
Big. I mean, like, if you have to take 8 offensive linemen because you get him in your class, like, you just do it, because he's that rare of a talent. But at the same time, yeah, I posted about it yesterday at huskerbigred.com, and that was my answer was, until he takes a visit, I'm not taking it seriously. So,
Yeah.
I think that in terms of recruiting, I think that's all the hits we got. But I did want to segue. Donovan Raiola did an interview on Monday talking about the offensive line. So there was a lot of kind of tidbits in there. So Matt Rule's talked about it. He's talked about it. Everybody's kind of talking. This offensive line. With some of the additions. Ben Scott, some of the guys coming back from injury and suspension. But is the offensive line actually going to be better next season for Nebraska football? I wanted to debate that, and I'll throw it to you, Danny. What are your thoughts?
Yes. I think, again, like we mentioned earlier, having a coaching staff that takes pride in building a good offensive line, that's going to help. I think, some of the players returning, like Noelle, for example. I mean, Turner Corcoran, hopefully. You know, guys that didn't really get a chance to make a huge impact last year. And then, you have other linemen as well coming into the fold from the 2023 class. I mean, you look at some of the names in the class, and they really have an opportunity to shine. I mean, to me, the offensive line is wide open in terms of just talent and trying to get bodies on the line itself. You have Gatula, and then you have a guy like Brock Knudsen. So I think it will be better. I think having um, Riella more involved in recruiting and getting the guys he wants will help. And truth be told, they didn't perform terribly towards the end of last season. They got a little bit better, but by then it was too late. I think you know the line has a chance to pick up where it left off and have a much stronger season this year. And I feel like I might eat those words once the season starts, and you all will point back to this clip right here. But that's how I feel about it. So
With Teddy being back on the left side, that's going to be huge. And
I just hope he stays healthy.
yeah, Donovan said he's good to go. I mean, he said he's good to go. Well, last year I think they tried to play him when he was hurt. Those first few, it just didn't. They should have never played him.
Yeah.
So I think it's been good to get. He had the full all of last season. So I mean, he's had almost like a full year to get himself right. So I feel like he's going to be a cornerstone at that tackle position, which Nebraska needs. Left tackle, and then Corcoran. You mentioned Noelle coming back. I think that's he's a guy that I think can play in the NFL. And so to get a guy like that, I think Ben Scott is the same. To get him from Arizona State, a guy that's actually started like 20 some games in his career, at tackle and at center. So I feel like basically you're getting three really quality starters right there. And then you've got, the other two spots, which I think we've all kind of penciled in, Ben Hart at right tackle and Corcoran there at guard. But there's some other, listening to Raiola or just reading through the comments, there are some other depth pieces. Ethan Piper is a guy that, started games at guard. He could
And
play
he
at
was solid
center.
last year too, I
Yeah,
thought.
he was solid. So I mean, that's another guy that you're starting. I thought that Henry Leftoski actually played pretty well last year at guard, and he's someone that's kind of, I even forgot about him a little bit, just kind of lost in the shuffle. But he's another guy. I mentioned Gatula. I really feel like if Nebraska needs a tackle this year, I feel like there's a chance he could get that spot. I mean, probably right away, their first move would probably be to bump out Corcoran, and bump in Ethan Piper to take his spot. I mean, that makes sense, but I think that Gunnar Gatula, like, I don't think the game is too big for him. I think he could play tackle this year if needed. And then, Jacob Hood, you've got some of those other guys. But I feel like there's some depth this year. And I just feel really good about that starting five, especially, if Bryce Benhart can, build on the solid spring that he had, because he looked pretty solid to me. He looked like he actually like a legitimate
Yeah,
NFL caliber
he did look
prospect in
really
the
good.
spring. So we'll see. Hopefully he can he can do that. But I mean, Matt Rule said it from day one, and I don't think Matt Rule says things just to say, I don't think he would say that he thinks the offensive line is going to be better, if it well, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think I think he really believes it, and I think that's because he's seen a lot of the evidence on the field to believe it.
Well, he said that Bryce Benhart could be an NFL player. People got a chuckle out of that in the beginning, but I mean, like you said, Benhart performed well in the spring game, so maybe he Benhart just needed a reset, as did many others. I think maybe he just needed a change of scenery and a chance to kind of have a clean slate and start over, so to speak. So I'd love to see him, really kind of break out the season. I've been incredibly harsh on him, and I've kind of written him off, but I would love for him to prove me wrong and make me eat my words.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of guys that just, getting a spark with this coaching staff or just getting better coaching. It's not going to be, and this won't be the first instance of guys, like underachieving and now, kind of overachieving with a new coaching staff in place. So that's really what I'm banking on this year with a lot of these, veteran type guys. And, even some of the other guys that have played well in the past. I mean, like Quentin Newsome. I mean, who's to say that those guys can't take, another step under, the direction of like Evan Cooper and Tony White, you know what I mean? So I just feel like Nebraska's had players, like talent has not been the issue here over the last 5 years. The last decade, talent has not been Nebraska's problem. It's been a lot of coaching. And I mean, just look at the close games. I mean, like players win games, coaches lose games. And our coach lost us a lot of games over the last 5 years. And I don't think that's going to happen anymore.
No, and you look at, you mentioned having the talent. You look at a guy like Malcolm Hartzog. I'm excited to see how he, comes back and plays this year, because yeah, he was a bright spot last year. So I mean, just looking at that 2021 season, I mean, I believe we lost to Ohio State by 9. We lost to Michigan by a touchdown, if my memory serves me right. Or was it
I think
3 or
by
a touchdown?
three, it was by three. Yeah. Cause Nebraska, it was tied. It was tied actually. I think in Martinez, Nebraska had the ball and then fumbled it, and then Moody they got the field goal. Remember, that's what
Yeah,
happened. And
that's not.
then drove down to like the 45-yard line, two passes to the 50, and then like three incompletions, and then game over.
Best 3-9 team in history.
So yeah, I saw that tweet. Yeah, it's like, please just stop tweeting about that season. I don't want to see it anymore. I don't want to
I
think
know,
about
it's
the Michigan State
frustrating.
game ever again. That
Oh
was the
my,
game.
yeah, that
Well,
was,
the Michigan State game is when I first was like, yeah,
yeah.
this probably isn't going to work out with Scott Frost. And then the Michigan game, like, I just remember his face. Like there's like a famous picture of his face, and he's like he's got his hat off, and he's like rubbing his forehead, and like he's like
Yeah.
it's like you can see his like the saying, like a picture is worth 1,000 words. That picture right there after the Michigan loss in 2021 at Lincoln Memorial Stadium, that picture right there sums up the entire career of Scott Frost at Nebraska.
He
Just
knew
like
he was
lots
in
of,
over his head,
yeah, well, just like
or he doesn't give a shit, either or.
lots of promise, and then just couldn't get it done. I mean, I just think there were a lot of things that happened. I mean, I don't want to get into all this
Yeah.
stuff, but
The
if
Michigan
you're,
State game, I remember. Oh, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, like, if you have, you know, if not everything is right in your personal life, you're not going to be focused on your job 100%. So, Scott Frost, I mean, there's definitely some truth to some of the things out
Oh
there
yeah.
with the infidelities and all that. And
Oh yeah.
that definitely played a huge factor. I mean, if you're sitting there going through like a personal issue with your wife or whatever, how are you going to focus on the, with all the pressure and everything else, how are you going to focus on doing your best? So, I just think there was a whole bunch of a litany of issues and reasons why, he didn't succeed.
Yeah, and I actually remember the Michigan State game was tough too because if my memory serves me right, we held Kenneth Walker to
Oh yeah,
like
stuffed him,
under
nothing.
under 100 yards rushing. I'm looking it up right now real quick, but I think we
That
held.
that that game was won basically. Nebraska was the best team all game, and then they couldn't put anybody away because Adrian Martinez just was not an efficient quarterback. The defense played amazing. That defense, like the fact that defense didn't get to play in a bowl game, is just a travesty because
I
that was
know.
a really good defense.
Yeah, we
And
held
then
Kenneth Walker to 10 carries for 61 yards,
I
and
think some of that he got in overtime too.
he did. And then it was the punt return that tied the game. I thought it was the punt return that won it, but it ended up being
No,
the punt return by Jaden Reed. And I remember the entire right side being open.
yeah, because the punter punted it to the wrong side of the field.
And then
That's why we lost the game, because our
yeah,
punter could not effing punt the ball to the right side of the goddamn field.
he couldn't even punt the ball. There were some days where he couldn't punt the ball, but
That
anyway,
was the easy. Jaden Reed basically had nobody
yeah,
to he
yeah,
just walked in,
yep,
and yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was like a 7-point game, and Nebraska kept stuffing them,
yeah,
and then that was like Michigan State's last chance. I think they just burned their final timeout. Like Nebraska had to stop them one more time, and then they give up a punt return for a touchdown, and it was game over. And that game, and then like losing those two games to Michigan and Michigan State when they should have won, like that just
yeah,
you
yep.
know
That could have changed the trajectory of the season, honestly. Because
yep.
you win those two, you feel pretty good about yourself. And speaking of not feeling good about yourself, Pat Fitzgerald's last win came against Nebraska in Ireland. So
Yeah, that's crazy.
glad we were able to send him off. But probably the probably the final season of his coaching career in general, by giving him a victory, literally handing him a victory.
Yeah, good job, Scott Frost, on the onside kick. Oh, Jesus.
And we're in the Hall of Fame with Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern stuff is in the Hall of Fame
Oh
because they beat
God.
Nebraska. So
And we paid him like millions of dollars too.
they quite literally had nothing to lose that game, and they didn't. They played
but
like they wanted it.
but hey, Georgia Southern, at least like they got rid of Scott Frost for us. So I
They
mean,
did. So thank you, Georgia Southern.
it should send Clay Helton a bottle of champagne. Thanks, buddy.
Oh man, hopefully all that misery can be forgotten about this season with a good season. I truly do feel optimistic. I remember feeling optimistic in 2021, and I kind of felt shaky in 2022, but I'm back to my optimism for better or for worse in 2023. But I don't think some of the things we just mentioned, I don't think we'll see that under Matt Rule.
No, I don't think so either. I'm not saying that Matt Rule is going to be perfect, but I don't think that you're going
Yeah,
to see Nebraska losing games because of a fake, a surprise onside kick. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Just
Or no
or
punt
the
coverage on the entire right
yeah.
side of the field.
I mean, come on. You don't even see that I haven't seen that happen. I've covered high school football
No.
for almost 15 years, 6-man, 8-man, 11-man. I've never seen anything like that. Not
Yep.
once.
No, I haven't either. And I've been a part
But
of several teams and stuff, but
but Nebraska against Michigan State, yeah, he got a top 25 win hanging in the balance, and yeah,
that
so
was the game I threw in the towel for that season, honestly, because I felt like the things were slowly starting to trend downward
yeah.
after that game.
But anyways, well, folks, we've been up and down in this episode here, talk some recruiting. We get our shots in on Scott Frost. You can tell how much we're drinking the Kool-Aid for this season, but we're going to have a lot more episodes coming up. We're literally, I think camp starts July 31st, if I'm not mistaken. So we're like
Really?
20 days away from
That's crazy.
Nebraska.
This offseason went by fast, like, relatively speaking.
I love too that they're going to the old school camp, like that they're doing
Yeah,
the camp thing.
the
Matt
dorms.
Rule,
Yeah,
yeah, Matt Rule is just, I love him. I love him. I don't care, but
yeah.
he's pushing all the right buttons, and I love the old school approach. It's what
He
these guys
wants to be
need.
here. He wants to be here too. He's not just collecting a check. You can
Yeah,
tell he really wants to be here, and that matters a lot too, because we've seen what happens when a coach doesn't want to be here or wants to just collect a check.
and these guys needed a kick in the ass, a little
Yeah,
bit. And I think they got it with their winter conditioning. I mean, Matt Rule, that's the funny thing is he comes off as the nicest guy, but he works these guys hard. Don't make any mistakes. Like he knows how to coach them up. And so, like the guys on the field, like they're gonna have proven that they want to be on the field this
same
season.
thing with Ed Foley. I feel like he comes off as a teddy bear, but he is a very strict coach. And EJ Barthel. I mean, you've seen videos of him barking at players, so I love it. I love it.
Yep. That's how you got to do it. So make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, comment, make sure that you share so that more Husker fans can catch up with our content. And we'll have some more stuff later this week. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.